Hello and welcome to Connect. I'm your host, Randy Shabilo. On today's show, we'll have Adam Tittemore, the administrator for the RM of Corman Park, celebrating their 50th anniversary this year. And as always, we'd like to connect with you. Follow us on Facebook to watch new and past interviews or email us at connectyxe@gmail.com. The RM of Corman Park, formed in 1970, is 50 years old this year. The RM administrator is Adam Tittemore, and he joins us today to give us some more insight into what's happening with this, I guess, an RM around the city or the city in the middle of an RM. Which is it, Adam?
Thanks, Randy. Yeah, and of course, coming from the rural perspective, I would say that the RM was there first, and the city developed within the municipality. So Corman Park is the rural municipality that surrounds the city of Saskatoon, as well as the cities of Martensville and Warman, and the towns of Dalmeny, Osler, and Langham. We encompass over 800 square miles of land. We have over 1,100 miles of maintained roadway within the RM, and really you can't get to any of those other municipalities without going through Corman Park. We have 10 major provincial highways that go through our borders, and a population of over 9,000 people, which would be over double the next largest rural municipality in the province. As you noted, we were created in 1970 through the amalgamation of three previous smaller RMs, being the RM of Corey, Warman, and Park, which is how you come up with the name, the RM of Corman Park. We are governed by a 9-member elected council led by Reeve Judy Harwood, who has been the Reeve since 2012.
And how did you get to be in your role? I mean, as an administrator, you've got to have your finger on so many different things from, I would imagine, cattle and farming through to residential and some industrial parks that you have within the RM itself.
Yeah, it's a really interesting municipality to work in. You have all that goes along with being outside of the largest city in the province, and there's some good things and some bad things that go along with that. But we do have a wide range of residential opportunities, economic opportunities within the RM, ranging from your traditional agriculture to 5 rural industrial parks that we have within the boundaries of the RM. So depending on where you are, you can have your grain farming. We do have the largest concentration of intensive livestock dairy operations in the province within Corman Park. And then you have, like I mentioned, the wide variety of residential opportunities, from your traditional agricultural acreages to high-end country residential.
And in your role, I guess you're much like a city administrator. It's still a municipality that services everything from roads to policing and development and things like that. How many people would the RM employ in delivering those services?
So we have throughout the departments that we look at, we look after roads, water utilities, planning and development, fire services, weed control, policing, recreation, and general administration. So at our seasonal peak, we'd be at approximately 80 employees. In the wintertime and off construction season, we drop down to about 25.
Yes, construction season.
Yes.
Famous part of living here. What happens when you, as an administrator, get and field calls from, let's take development and I would say encroachment from the city in terms of the city looking at expanding what it's doing because there's nowhere to grow except into the RM of Corman Park. How do you deal with, is there a buffer or some type of like the Saskatoon Freeway would go through part of your area?
That's always an interesting balance for us. We recognize that the urban municipalities within our boundaries are continuing to grow, and the only way they have to grow, other than limited infill and things like that, is traditionally out into the RM of Corman Park. So while not wanting to restrict opportunities for those urban municipalities, we certainly want to ensure that our ratepayers and residents have the opportunity to develop in the interim, and that they can do so in such a way that it doesn't restrict future growth of anyone. So we have an existing, what we call the Corman Park Saskatoon Planning District, which is an arrangement that's been in place since the 1970s, where we develop lands within that boundary jointly between the city and the RM in wanting to make sure that we can do things in a responsible way. As the province has continued to grow, and we saw an unprecedented growth in the early part of the 2000s, We recognized that we needed to go further with that, and that's where we've currently started the Saskatoon North Partnership for Growth. This is a joint partnership between Corman Park, Saskatoon, Warman, Martinsville, and the town of Osler, where we're looking at land use planning and utility services to grow the region to 1 million people.
I would imagine, just looking at the maps, that Warman and Martinsville are not really that far apart, that there could be some linkage there over the years, and then eventually Saskatoon and Martinsville and Warman would look at a more cohesive operation, perhaps?
So certainly everybody wants to ensure that there is still, each individual municipality, everybody maintains their autonomy. But definitely when you fly over the region, you know that everybody is getting a lot closer together. And this partnership is a great opportunity to look at things where we can be more efficient with things like services, water, wastewater, roadways, and that kind of thing, where we're not duplicating services, but we're making sure that we can make everything work in the most efficient way possible so that we get the high level of service that everybody is become accustomed to and wants to see continue, but also that it comes at an affordable cost.
So if we have the provincial highway network that cuts through or goes through the RM, and there's your own municipal roads that you look after, is that cost shared with the province, or do you do a lot of that on your own with the ratepayers you have?
For the most part, our municipal roadways are done just by each individual municipality, Corman Park being no exception to that. We do certainly look for provincial and federal grants where they may come available, but the vast majority of those roadways are coming through municipal dollars. We've seen some great partnerships in the last number of years where we've recognized some of these regional roadways that might be in the RM or in another municipality, but they're really servicing some of those urban municipalities. So we've had some good partnerships where there's been financial contributions to go towards some of those regional roadways. And in turn, we've looked at an RM as partnering on things like recreational facilities, where we know that our residents are using them. However, they're situated within those urban municipalities.
Looks like there's going to be a bit of a sharing of facilities as Martinsville continues to grow as a city, and the same with Warman. The demand for things like ice time when that eventually returns, and soccer fields and swimming. Is there a future vision in terms of how that will unfold with the three larger centers, Saskatoon, Warman, Martinsville? To a certain degree, I guess Osler would come into play because it's not that far, and if you need ice time, it's not that far to travel to get that.
So certainly each of those municipalities in the RM has been involved as partners in these are looking at comprehensive recreational master plans that will identify what the uses or what needs there are in the region, and then identifying where those things should be planned. So for instance, if maybe Martinsville and Warman both don't need certain facilities, so they could look at each one doing a different one and allowing their residents to utilize both those facilities.
Would you envision, with your experience as an administrator with the RM in particular, some of that linkage through from Saskatoon to Martinsville, Warman? You mentioned water, wastewater. Would transit come onto your radar at all?
It hasn't been a major part of our current discussions, although it's certainly in the background. What we've been focusing on right now is getting the land uses correct and getting some of those core services such as water and wastewater, and making sure that we aren't hampering the growth of municipalities in that regard. But definitely it's been brought up through the public consultation process, and that would be a future stage of the plan, would be to look at some of those alternative transportation measures.
So with transportation and the Saskatoon Freeway, does that take up a fair bit of I guess, an easement through the RM in terms of what the corridor has been identified as?
It does. So we've been working very closely with the Ministry of Highways and the other partner municipalities in the project. And as they get to more detail in their planning, they're able to shrink down what that corridor looks like. So that's been our encouragement to the province, is to just make up everyone's mind as to where it's going to go, dedicate those lands, and we can move forward. Because what we have right now is wide tracts of land where development has to be restricted because of the unknowns. And we're just saying one way or another, we need to decide so we can get rid of those unknowns and give investors certainty in the region.
I would imagine that would be I'm going to say years, but maybe a decade away in terms of planning, financial realization, and political will?
There seems all of the detailed planning is happening right now. It's kind of in the midst, year two of a 3-year stage to get there. But after that, of course, you start looking at acquisition of land, and some of the real capital dollars that need to come into play. So it's my understanding that as of now, the Saskatoon Freeway is not on the province's 5-year capital plan. So we know that likely it's going to be at least beyond that window.
And what happens with emergency services like fire and police and ambulance serving the RM? How is that dealt with?
So we have, breaking it into policing and fire separately. Police, we do have a contractual arrangement with the RCMP where they provide policing services to the RM of Corman Park. However, we also supplement that with the Corman Park Police Service, which is a standalone municipal force, similar to what you would see in the city of Saskatoon. That's been a very successful arrangement for us since the 1970s, and we're very fortunate to have our own force because the RCMP certainly runs into challenges with the vast size of the land that they have to cover, and we're able to provide some of that extra service level to our residents. When it comes to fire services, we contract those services with each of the urban municipalities that are within our boundaries. We're fortunate that we have very high level professional services within each of those urbans, and it didn't make any sense for us to set up our own when they're at strategic locations within our boundaries already. So we pay a fixed fee on an annual basis for them to be available for us, and then a pay for use as fire services might be needed in different locations of the RM.
So essentially, you're kind of like a city and utilizing those resources around your RM to provide services for the businesses and residents that live there.
Yeah, it's kind of an ongoing joke around our council table that if you go by our population, certainly we could be a city in Saskatchewan. We would just cover a very wide geographic boundary.
And in your training, what did you have to do to manage this whole plethora of departments and people and different types of services that you provide? Where did you go to learn that?
I went to the University of Saskatchewan. I have a public administration degree from there, and then I was part of the kind of the tail end of the group that was going to Alberta out of school. I went through a municipal internship program where the Alberta government had recognized that this was a field where people were retiring out of, and there wasn't a lot of people coming into it. So I was very fortunate to have some great mentors working in a county in Alberta. And then when the opportunity arose to come home to Saskatchewan, I was ready, and this was a great place to be.
Well, it was a good decision, and thankfully, the people of the RM of Corman Park on their 50th anniversary have someone at the helm like you. And I want to thank you for your service to the RM and wish you all the best on your 50th anniversary.
Well, thank you very much. We have a great team. So I can't say enough about all the RM staff that we have that get everything done and provide the high level of service that we have.
That's our show for today. I'd like to thank Adam Tittemore, the RM administrator for Corman Park, celebrating their 50th anniversary this year. I'm your host, Randy Shabila. We'll see you next time on Connect.